Racing is a presentation of the National Thoroughbred Racing Association and ESPN.
You're watching Citgo's Kentucky Derby Week coverage on ESPN.
The first Saturday in May, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, where the stage is once again set for that one special moment that transforms equine athlete to equine immortal. On this one special day each year, there's no place more alive with excitement than Churchill Downs. What makes the Kentucky Derby so exciting is exactly what makes life itself exciting, the unpredictability. The logical choice could win.
Osaichi Pegasus wins it by a length and a half.
But here it tends to be more exception than rule.
But it's charismatic, holding on to win it by a head.
The longest of long shots could beat the odds and surprise us all.
War Emblem has won the Derby in front-running fashion.
The time is once again upon us for a new empire. Hopes have ridden high on Empire Maker seemingly since his birth. With a regal pedigree and Hall of Fame connections, he has provided glimpses of the predicted greatness.
And Empire Maker suddenly opens up 5. Empire Maker, yes!
But on the eve of destiny, the preparations have not gone totally as planned. So the challengers are ready and have been given reason for more hope. Will the perceived flaw prove fatal to this year's favorite, or will the chosen one be able to summon the 2 minutes of magic that will confirm his greatness and take the first step on the road to immortality that awaits the next Triple Crown champion? Those questions will soon be answered at the 129th Kentucky Derby. Good afternoon and welcome to the Kentucky Derby special presented by Visa. Kind of a hazy, breezy day here at Churchill Downs on Derby Day. Big crowd filing in. The usual suspects have been assembled. The usual libations as well. You got blue bloods, rednecks, everybody kind of tossed together here. That's what makes this event so great. You got Pam Anderson, Kid Rock, Slash, Meatloaf, Tom Brady, Curtis Joseph. None of those people pictured right here, but they're all in the scene. That's what makes it so great. The hat's always a part of the scene as well. Big card of racing is ahead. We've got 4 undercard stakes races to get you set for Kentucky Derby 129. Are we here to see a coronation and end of this Triple Crown drought? Well, Empire Maker is this year's candidate. He has the most discussed foot bruise in history. We'll break down the favorite as well as his contenders. You've got some unusual numbers of stories here. You've got a Utah bred, the first ever to run in the Derby, who comes via Panama. Another horse who was raised in Idaho, of all places. As far as the owners, you got Hollywood connections, Spielberg and his buddies, even television executives. We'll meet some of the personalities coming up. And as for jockeys, you got a kid 20 years old riding in his very first race at Churchill Downs, and it happens to be the Kentucky Derby, Tyler Bays. All those stories coming up. There, of course, is a field of 16 3-year-olds for Derby 129 with the scratch yesterday. The purse, $1 million added. About 70% of that goes to the winner. The track, fast. It seems to be fair, judging from the races here so far. As always, Randy Moss alongside. No analysts in America choose through hosts like Randy does, but he never leaves. We talked about this Derby field, and you were out there this morning on the backside where all the action was. A little more action than usual today.
Yeah, I'm glad I got out of bed this morning for this. Bobby Frankel.
You never go to bed, do you?
Bobby Frankel sent Empire Maker out for a gallop this morning on Derby morning, and the horse was much improved compared to his antics of yesterday. Now, I must confess, I actually wasn't there to watch this gallop part of it. It's against my religion to get up and come to the backstretch when it's this dark. But Empire Maker galloped perfectly, and Bobby Frankel was very pleased with what he saw.
It's up to him now. It's up to him.
That's a big interview for Bobby on Race Day. That's about as talkative as he gets.
When I approached him a little bit later, I was just going to walk up to him and say, hey, good luck. And I didn't even get a word out of my mouth. And he looked at me and he pointed at me and he said, you know all this stuff about the foot bruise and the chips and the tendon and SARS and whatever else he might have? So let me tell you one thing. This afternoon, he's going to kick their butt. He's very, very confident.
That does sound like a confident trainer, but there's some others who don't believe that he is clearly the best in his field, especially if he's not quite 100%. Super Blitz will actually start from the 2-hole. The rail will be an open gate because of the scratch yesterday to Sir Cherokee.
Brancusi from post position number 2, trained by Patrick Biancone at 28-1. Tony Farina, who's already been in the news today. That's what I'm talking about, coming from behind with his new blinkers at 7-1, and David Flores. And there's Frankel's other horse, Peace Rules.
Yeah, the other horse that every other trainer would love to have in his race.
Exactly. Winner of the Louisiana Derby and the Bluegrass. Quite a daily double there.
When you view these current odds and you see Empire Maker still at 4-1, keep in mind that's going to change throughout the day. But I have to say, still at 4-1, that's the 6-5 morning line favorite. I know there's a lot more money still to come, but does that surprise you?
It does surprise me a bit because Empire Maker is a deserving favorite. I think it's a combination of two things. Number one, the fact that favorites have been defeated in this race so often, and number two, all the publicity about the foot bruise.
10 most wanted currently at 5-1. Perhaps a better gauge of what the public thinks about these Derby horses. This is the Oaks Derby double in Birdtown, an 18-1 winning the Oaks yesterday. It's a hell of a payoff if Super Blitz comes
No kidding. Now, the lower prices that you see here in the Oaks Derby double probables are probably more indicative of what the final odds are going to be than the wagering that we've seen so far in advance. And you see Empire Maker is the $148.60 payoff is the favorite. Peace Rules was 200 and something second favorite, and 10 most wanted third favorite in that.
We talked about some of the stories here. One factor has to be trainers, and there are 7 trainers who have a first-time Kentucky Derby starter. They're all accomplished guys. Many of them have won races all over the world. But is there something about having a first-time starter in this? Guys like Baffert and Lucas, the veterans, say, yes, certainly there is.
Sure. When you talk to Wayne Lucas about it, one of Wayne's favorite comments is that the guys that are doing it for the first time don't think it's a big deal, but if you've done it, you know that you need to have been through that experience before to understand all the pitfalls, all the things that can go wrong, and honestly, what not to listen to. There's a lot of noise on Derby Week that gets in the ear of rookie trainers and sometimes distracts them that veteran trainers learn to tune out.
Experience and inexperience, I think, also a factor with the jockeys. You got a few guys in their 40s, a majority in their 30s, and you have a 20-year-old Tyler Bays who's making phone calls this past week asking folks about the Churchill Downs track, about the long stride. I mean, that just amazes me that he has not ridden this track before and debuts in the Derby on a horse that has a chance to win, the Bob Baffert horse, Indian Express.
You would think that he would have taken him out earlier on the card to get familiar with the racetrack. You would have thinking that Bob Baffert, you would have thought Bob Baffert would have wanted him to get him out earlier on the card. And we saw this already today. Tony Farina, another first-time jockey, another really young rider, had no mounts scheduled until the Derby, and they just, Michael Tabor had a horse earlier on the card. He took Pat Day off and put Tony Farina on just so he could get a trip over the track.
Well, Hank Goldberg joins us now. I know, Hank, we were talking about this story earlier. Pat Day's been riding Derbies for 2 decades, and Bays has been alive for 2 decades. Quite a contrast.
Yeah, well, remember, Spectacular Bid was ridden by Ron Franklin, who had never had a Derby mount before, who was also 20 years old, I believe. But they gave him 8 mounts during the course of the week so he could get a little bit used to the racetrack. I asked Bob Baffert, with Kefwayne scratching, why, if he considered changing to Pat Valenzuela, who doesn't have a mount, who was supposed to be on Kefwayne, and Bob said he considered it, but he thought that Tyler Bays really fit this horse. A little bit about Tyler. As you said, he's 20 years old. He is a very confident rider, a fun-loving person who, from what I'm told from people who are close to him, he's not going to give it a second thought. But I, too, am surprised that he didn't get at least 1 mount. Imagine this, the first time he rides at Churchill Downs, and mind you, he's never had a Grade 1 win, although he almost did in the Santa Anita Derby. He's ridden in Dubai. He's done a lot since he was the Apprentice of the Year 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. But this is incredible that he gets his first mount ever at Churchill Downs, and it's in the Kentucky Derby. It's kind of like your first date in life is Pamela Anderson.
Well, you got to trust Bob Baffert. If he says the guy is cool and collected and he can handle it, you tend to believe him. But that is the definition of cool. If he can step in that starting gate, first time ever at this track in this race.
Well, the owner of Indian Express, Phil Chess, actually asked Bob Baffert, because he had been told by his friends, hey, ask Bob if he might want to change to a veteran jockey, and Bob would have none of it. He said, Tyler Bays is my man. I'm sticking with him.
Let's check into the barn area now with Kurt Hoover.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I'll tell you what, I was going to call Randy on that story about seeing Empire Maker this morning, because I was here and I did see him come out, and I sure as heck didn't see Randy out here. Anyway, all kidding aside, Empire Maker was a real professional this morning. Came out about 6:30, went right through this gap here onto the racetrack, galloped very professionally, came back very calm and well behaved. I was here yesterday when things were a lot different, and he looked like a completely different animal as far as his behavior today. So whatever bothered him yesterday, he's really settled down, at least this morning. And since it's just a couple hours away from the big race, things are of a very positive note right now for Empire Maker. Still, I'm going to try and beat him, guys. I'm not going to go for all those stories.
Searching for value, Kurt. We'll talk a lot more about betting strategy and, of course, a lot more about Empire Maker. But a reminder, the Citco Pick 6 Challenge. Log on to ESPN.com. You're too late for today. There was a big card of these stakes races, of course, ending with the Derby today. But you can get online and begin to play for next week. Hats as the sun comes out. We'll talk more. We got live racing just ahead. Juveniles.
This ESPN presentation of the Kentucky Derby Special is brought to you by Citco. We know you. By Visa, proud sponsor of the Visa Triple Crown. By Claiborne Farm, where champions begin. By Budweiser. The best things in life are the things that are true. Budweiser. By Kawasaki All-Terrain and Utility Vehicles. Kawasaki. Let the good times roll. And by Long John Silver's. Dive into something new.
Talked about the Hollywood connections for That's What I'm Talking About. Steven Spielberg here. He owns a piece of that horse, as does Gary Ross, Frank Marshall, others involved in the production of Seabiscuit. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now to Charlotte Hawks, who's hanging out, as always, with the beautiful people.
Chris, one of the most durable quarterbacks in football, three-time Super Bowl champion with the Cowboys. Troy Aikman, now a TV analyst, but there are some folks down in Dallas who would love to see you back in the game. What would it take?
It'd take a lot. It'd take a little bit of health on my part and a little bit of money on their part, but I'm real happy doing what I'm doing and excited about Bill Parcells being there in Dallas, as a lot of people are.
What do you see for the next season?
Well, you know, I think it's going to take a little bit of time. It's a team that's been 5-11 for the last 3 years, but they had their first camp this past weekend, and Bill Parcells is setting a tone there. I think they've had some good drafts. I expect some good things from them.
Now, this is your first Derby here with your wife. Yeah. And do you study really hard for these races, or are you just sitting back and enjoying the event?
Well, I'm sitting back and enjoying it. And we brought our 13-year-old daughter, Rachel, and that's really why we're here. She's a real horse enthusiast, and I've left the betting up to her as far as picking the horses. I said, you tell me the winners, and we'll go do it. And we're having a good time.
So who are you looking so far for the Derby?
Well, we haven't gotten that far yet. We're on the seventh race, and so we're taking it slowly. And
probably have a couple in mind.
Got a couple in mind. You know, everybody's quick to give you the quick tips, and you just got to kind of sort through it all. Excuse me, and figure out who's being honest with you.
Oh, come on, give one little pick. One pick. Oh, shoot, Chris. Not going to pull it out of you.
No waffling, but he does learn to ignore the nonsense. Next up, the sixth race. It's the 18th running of the Three Chimneys Juvenile. It's kind of who's got the fastest youngster. Boys and girls thrown in together. A couple of scratches leaves it with a 7-horse field.
Most of these horses only with one career start. There's one that's running for the first time. The scratch at the number 4, another Freddie. There's your heavy favorite, number 6, Heckle at 4-5. Also scratch the 7, Exploit Lad. Your first-time starter is number 8, El Cisco Kid.
The lack of seasoning. How will they handle the Derby Day atmosphere? That's a question. Jerry Bailey, of course, a experienced hand aboard Heckle, trained by Todd Pletcher, who's got 3 in this race now.
And this horse certainly handled his first career start with ease. It was at Keeneland on April the 18th. It was a 4.5 furlong race on a muddy track. He not only won it by 12.5 lengths, he tied a 35-year-old track record. That was 4.5 furlongs and 51.04. It was in the mud. Maybe that would be a factor if you're handicapping this race, but still, obviously, the horse has plenty of ability.
Yeah, when you win by 12.5 lengths over basically a little more than a half a mile, that's dominant.
It's very dominant, and he's also a half to a Grade 1 stakes winner called Spectacular Tide, so he's got the pedigree as well.
Who might challenge him in here?
The other horse I'm looking at is the other Pletcher horse, the 3-horse Limehouse, ironically both owned by the Dogwood Stable, that partnership put together by manager Cott Campbell. Limehouse won his race at Keeneland 2 days before, but only by neck.
Florida bred. Pletcher could have this nice trifecta here.
Pat Day is riding the #1 horse, East Bay. Okay, this will be the 18th running of the Three Chimneys Juvenile, and Pat has now ridden in all of them. He's won this race 6 times, so he has a knack with the 2-year-olds for certain.
Fashion Girl, Wayne Lucas has a horse. He won this last year with the Philly Holiday Runner. Phillies have had some success in this race. Luke Wright-Boss will have the call. It's the 18th Three Chimneys Juvenile. Luke?
Thanks. We're just about set up here. El Cisco Kid, who's at 18-1 on the board, goes up, and we're waiting for Korsakov to the outside gate. The colors of Michael Tabor, and Korsakov, nice winner by almost 4 lengths in the debut. Gary Stevens taking over for Jerry Bailey this afternoon. Aboard Korsakov, who will go up to the outside gate. Once again, Roger Nagel waiting to see they're all standing in line before he loads that last horse in, our starter here at Churchill Downs. Waiting for Korsakov, number 9, at 5-1 on the board. Just about set. Seem to be all standing good from this vantage point anyway. And Korsakov stepping forward now. Korsakov and Gary Stevens up to the outside gate. Halfway in. Korsakov locked up, set to go. All in line. All set. Off and running in the Three Chimneys Juvenile. Fast start for East Bay up the inside quickly. Limehouse is right there. Fashion Girl gets her neck in front. El Cisco Kid flashing good speed up into 4th. Heckles in mid-pack racing 5th. The neck to I'd Be a Lady in 3. Back to Korsakov at the back of the pack around the turn. El Cisco Kid and Jamie Bruin taking a short lead. Heckle charging up the challenge on the outside. Fashion Girl holds that rail spot in 3rd. Limehouse is racing 4th with 3 to make up at this point. Whips out now on East Bay up the inside. And I'd Be a Lady in Korsakov comes on from the back of the pack to the top of the lane. Quarter 22 seconds flat of the stretch drive. Whips out on El Cisco Kid, a neck in front. Heckle up to that run throat latch now. Limehouse up the inside down to the final furlong. Limehouse is charging up the inside. El Cisco Kid holding tough. Limehouse goes on by to take the lead under Robbie Alvarado. And Limehouse gets up to win the Three Chimneys Juvenile, going away a length and a half to a very game El Cisco Kid. Tight for 3rd, either East Bay or Heckle.
We talked about the strength of Todd Pletcher's entries here. Limehouse was kind of the other Pletcher horse with the odds-on favorite Heckle. But Limehouse, the strong late move on the inside.
No kidding. Getting through along the inside. 1-2 favorite Heckle. Didn't get off that smartly from the starting gate. Spotted him about 2 or 3 lengths in the first 16th of a mile. Made that big move but couldn't sustain it. Meanwhile, the 6-1 stablemate Limehouse carries the mail with jockey Robbie Alvarado, who has a mount in the Kentucky Derby later on with Awfully Wild.
The 3rd Pletcher horse, Korsakov, is looking good at this point.
And how about the horse in the middle? The first-time starter, El Cisco Kid, who went off at odds of 24-1. They were trying to kill the world with him, and they almost got it done.
$6,500 purchase. He's a bargain in one of these richer companies.
Limehouse, owned by Dogwood Stable, just like Heckle. Trained by Todd Pletcher. He said he had 3 horses in this race. He looks like he runs 1-4. I don't think Heckle was quite able to save 3rd. And there's Robbie.
Robbie, congratulations. Nice, strong move on the rail there.
Yeah, thank you. I told him in the post race, I said you performed well. You earned this spot next year this day.
Did how the race unfolded surprise you? How'd you get away?
Got away awfully quick, which was surprisingly. Got off a bit slow at Keelan. Todd done a lot of work with him and got him up for today.
Now, we've talked to some of the other riders today periodically about their opinions on how the racetrack has been playing. Speed, comfort behind, inside, outside. What's your take on that?
Well, I don't think he's showing any biases towards coming off the pace or staying up front. I think it's pretty honest. It's quick, but it's got a bounce to it. So I'm looking forward to the Derby.
What about the Derby next year? Is this the kind of horse you've been on him for both of his victories now? Does he have a big future?
Well, he's got the right connections behind him for sure.
All right, Robbie, thanks very much. Todd Pletcher's Limehouse, son of Grant Slam, shows some speed and a strong move. Wins the Three Chimneys Juvenile. More live racing and plenty more Kentucky Derby talk ahead from Churchill Downs. Back to our Kentucky Derby special presented by Visa. Plenty of live racing still to come before the Derby, and a reminder that coverage of the NBA playoffs continues tomorrow on ABC Sports. Portland playing the role of a deep closer in this series. And we're down 3-0. They have leveled things. It's back to Dallas for the decisive Game 7, 3:30 Eastern Time tomorrow on ABC. Limehouse, the winner of the Three Chimneys Juvenile, promising 2-year-old for Todd Pletcher, his last trainee to win this. More Than Ready went on to run in the Kentucky Derby. In fact, there's been a couple of recent winners of this race. More Than Ready and Favorite Trick have gone on to run in the Derby the next year.
And let's take a look from our isolated look there at Limehouse, who rallies from just off the pace. You see he'll duck to the inside there through a hole. Once he gets past Lucas's filly, he ducks to the end with Robbie Alvarado. And something that's always important in these 2-year-old races, especially this early in the year when they have such little experience. A horse, for example, like Heckle, in his first start was in front all the way and never knew what it was like to have dirt kicked in his face or have to come from behind. By contrast, when Limehouse made his first start at Keeneland, he rallied from off the pace. So he had been accustomed to coming from behind just like that, and that experience helped him.
Jerry Bailey, pretty much his choice of the 3 Pletcher mounts, went with Heckle, the beaten favorite. With the winners, Janine Edwards.
Well, I'm with Todd Pletcher. Of course, he saddled Heckle and he saddled Limehouse, and Heckle was sort of the horse that everybody was looking at in here. And I know Jerry Bailey had ridden both of these horses when they broke their maiden, and he chose to ride Heckle. Didn't get away from the gate all that well today, though. What happened?
Well, actually, he rode Korsakoff and Heckle. He didn't ride the colt that won, but Heckle just broke a half step slow, or maybe 2 steps slow, really. And, you know, these 5 furlong races, the break is so important. This colt had done everything right in his first out. He just wasn't as impressive as Heckle in terms of Heckle drew off and won by 12 and equaled the track record, but I thought this colt ran a good race. We were kind of wavering on whether we would run both of the Dogwood horses, but considering these races usually set up with a lot of speed, we thought Limehouse might be able to sit a little bit off the pace and still be effective.
And he showed an awful lot of maturity because he was down on the inside, and I guess this is very satisfying for you, seeing a colt at this young age, just 2 starts now, showing this kind of professionalism.
Well, you know, he was sort of green in his first start. He kind of weaved down the track kind of inside and out, and switched leads late. Today it was much more professional for having the race under his belt at Keeneland.
Now, you had, as a trainer, the most 3-year-olds nominated to the Triple Crown this year. I guess a testament to just how tough it is to get to the Derby and how fragile these horses are that you don't have a runner in the race.
Well, fortunately, we didn't have too many of them get hurt, but unfortunately, none of them ran fast enough to deserve a chance today. So, you know, we went into April 12th with a horse in the Arkansas Derby, the Wood Memorial, and the Bluegrass, and unfortunately, none of them ran well enough to, you know, at least in my opinion, deserve a chance here. So we felt like if we didn't come over here with a legitimate shot, we'd stay at home and regroup for the summer.
Well, maybe we'll see you here next year with Limehouse or Heckle, perhaps, because it looks like he's got 2 pretty talented juveniles in the barn right now. Chris?
All right, Janine, thank you. And a horse to keep an eye on, El Cisco Kid. We talked about youngster making his race debut in front of 125,000 plus at Churchill Downs. That's pretty impressive as a long shot. Run second.
He's going to be depressed when he comes back a few weeks from now. There's nobody here.
Pedigree far less imposing than most of these, but a horse to keep an eye on nevertheless. Talked about imposing juveniles. Affirmed certainly was that about 26 years ago. This, of course, is the silver anniversary of Affirmed's Triple Crown triumph as we look back at now at not only his triumph, but one of the great rivalries in racing history.
The 104th Kentucky Derby contained a matchup that had racing fans drooling with anticipation. After 6 battles as juveniles, Affirmed and Alydar met for the first time as 3-year-olds in the Kentucky Derby. Affirmed was the 9-5 second choice, despite winning 4 of their previous 6 encounters. With Alydar at 6-5, it was the first time since 1960 that 2 separate betting interests went off at less than 2-1. Jockey Steve Cawthon was content to let the usually front-running Affirmed sit behind the leaders early in 3rd place. Believe It made a strong move on the far turn and had a short lead at the top of the lane, but Affirmed quickly pulled past. He opened up by 2 in mid-stretch, and then had more than enough to hold off the late charge of Alydar to win by a length and a half. Affirmed had once again gotten the better of Alydar, but at the time, few realized the 1978 Kentucky Derby would be a prelude to the greatest rivalry in the history of the Triple Crown.
It sure was. The Preakness won by a neck, and then the Belmont by a head over Alydar. Most people forget they also ran a bunch of times as juveniles. It's like 6 times, I think, as 2-year-olds.
Huge rivalry. Affirmed, one of the most intelligent horses of all time. I mean, not only was he one of the best of all time, and sadly he died a couple of years ago. I had a chance to see him after he retired to stud at Spendthrift Farm, and he used to play a game with people. Tour groups would come to the fence. He would charge full speed at the fence and keep coming until everyone took off running and scattered, and then he would come to a screeching halt and stand there and just kind of look at him like, you idiots. Very smart.
He got a kick out of that, did he?
Loved it. He did it repeatedly.
Ferb and Allendale, the great footnote to the story, those guys used to hang out together, like same stud barn right after they were retired.
It's true.
Well, it's been 25 years since a firm's victory, and been trying to give away that $5 million Visa Triple Crown bonus ever since. Carl Pascarella, chairman, CEO of Visa USA, has that check ready. Will Empire Maker do it? Will he end the drought at 25 years the way the great Secretariat did? We'll meet the favorite and his challengers in the Kentucky Derby field when we come back. Churchill Downs on a beautiful, sunny Derby day. And welcome back. Churchill Downs, more than $9 million or thereabouts bet on the Derby this year. As you get a look at the tote board on top of the paddock, it seems to be a little bit less crowded. You can actually move around this year, which is a good thing. Let's meet this field. This is also less congested than it has been. Reminder that you can see complete highlights and analysis following NBC Sports coverage of Derby 129 at 6:30 Eastern Time. They'll have it posted about, was it 6:04? So the post time, more or less. Let's meet this field. A battle long odds just to get in the Kentucky Derby. It's about 2,300 to 1 to get here based on the number of foals each year. Super Blitz will start from the 2-hole, but wearing number 1, we'll visit with her jockey, or his jockey, Rosemary Homeister, in just a second. She's just the 5th female jockey. This horse, obviously, a Florida bred and a long shot. Brent Cousy, the number 2 horse, 1 win in 7 starts, a late bloomer, trained by Patrick Biancone. Just broke his maiden 3 races back, but coming on strong. That's what I'm talking about, is the horse with the Hollywood connections, ridden by David Flores, a late runner. Offutt tries to go last to first. Interesting to see how far back he'll be placed in the Derby.
Number 5 is Frankel's other horse, so to speak, Peace Rules. All he's done is win the Louisiana Derby in the Bluegrass. Could be a key to an interesting pace scenario. Do they go to the lead because he's got the speed, or do they stalk the pace? Number 6 is Funny Side, another horse that has some speed. Funny Side trying to become the first New York bred ever to win the Kentucky Derby. He was a strong second to Empire Maker in the Wood Memorial. Before that, 3rd in the Louisiana Derby. And then there's the 7 horse Awfully Wild, who won the Holy Bull that you see here at odds of 27 to 1. Then he became ill, ran a fever, missed some training time. 3rd in the Bluegrass, but they say he's ready to peak again.
Buddy Gill has won. Gutsy Gelding won the San Felipe, the Santa Anita, ridden by Gary Stevens, who just loves his chances. Very confident, trained by Jeff Mullins. Number 9 horse is Indian Express, trained by Bob Baffert, who also feels very good about his chances. Tyler Bayes, the young jockey, we talked about him making his Churchill Downs debut. It's been a wild journey. This horse was bred in Utah, went to Panama. Lone Star Sky, a long shot closer, a late entry. His connections just kind of taking a shot here today, hoping the favorite is a little bit off. Shane Sellers, jockey.
Indian Express is trained by Baffert. Here's one, Domestic Dispute, that was formerly trained by Baffert. Sold just a couple of weeks ago. Entered in the Kentucky Derby. Domestic Dispute, though, has lost 3 in a row, and his career seems to be going in the wrong direction. Here is the big boy, Empire Maker. You saw his Wood Memorial. Before that, this was his 9 3/4 length win in the Florida Derby. He's got the connections. Jerry Bailey, Bobby Frankel. He's got the pedigree. 13, Eye of the Tiger, the runner-up here in the Lexington Stakes behind Scrimshaw. Only 5 lifetime starts. Never been farther than a mile and a 16th, but he is improving.
10 cents a shot, another Lucas horse, a long shot, another closer. Lost his last 3 races by a total of 80 lengths at Ohio bred, but Lucas said improving, and he'll need to really improve to get a piece of this. Out of here, another one we expect to be out of here. Prepped in Dubai, the only race of a 3-year-old, that huge round trip to Dubai and back. How will he respond? And 10 most wanted. Wally Dollacy, Pat Day, his record 20th straight Kentucky Derby. Illinois Derby winner. This is a house horse. ESPN execs involved, and they can't sleep at night.
I don't blame him. And there is Scrimshaw, the winner of the Lexington, 1 of 2 in the race, trained by Wayne Lucas.
And starting on the outside, which you don't think is going to help his chances at all.
No.
Hank always has